some of the people who were especially central, I think, in making Webster happen and making Webster grow, besides the sisters, were some of the lay people. One of them was Elizabeth Halpin, who was the director of admissions for many years. She had this, well, I forgot to say that midway in my 12 years, I was also made the Dean of Women, Dean of Students, meaning I had charge of the student council, the residence halls, that sort of thing, not the academic dean. So working with Elizabeth Halpin every summer, she would put up the pictures of incoming freshmen, and I would go to her office, and together we would study all their pictures so that when they arrived at freshman week, we could greet them by name. She had such an endearing way of personally connecting with students, and I always appreciated her for that.
The first one that had an impact on me was Sister Edwin Mary McBride. She taught me as a lay student when I went to Webster College. She taught me English. And she taught me to not just to read the literature, but to like the people in the books.
Well, Sister Edwin Mary McBride was my English teacher. And when I was trying to figure out about having a vocation to the Sisters of Loretto, I talked to her, and she said, well, don't blame me, I didn't pray you in.
So we grew up like at Webster because my mother was very involved at Webster with the alumni and did all kinds of things out there and knew the sisters. And so I remember meeting the women that had taught my mother and that kind of thing when I was a little girl. The women she talked about, Sister Germaine had taught her at Webster and used to come over to our house sometimes, and so I remembered her. Sister Borgia taught math. I remember that name. The one who was very significant in my mother's life was Sister Eduarda. Sister Eduarda was Dean of Students in the late 20s when my mother was a student there. And I think of Dean of Students in the 20s for a woman away from home for the first time was probably significant. The role that she played was when my mother and my father met in 1927 and he wanted to take my mother out. My mother's mother had discouraged her from dating because she thought since she had polio and she limped, she couldn't ever have children, I guess. And so Mother Eduarda said, Helen, you go out with Harry, I'll be responsible. It wasn't that, I mean, that's the foresightedness of that woman in the 20s. Well, she became Superior General, or the leader in the whole Sisters of Loretto in 1940. In those days, we used the word mother. We don't anymore. But Mother Eduarda was just a name throughout Loretto, who was the dean back in 1924.
One of them was Sister Carl Ann, whom many generations of Webster girls would love. She ran the bookstore, and she was the sacristan. She was the kind of person that on Mondays you would go in and confide in her how your weekend had gone.
The teachers that made an impression on me during that program were, of course, Sister Rose Vincent, Father Cletus Madsen, who did the scripture kinds of courses and that church history and so forth, and Father Tom Reardon, from whom I learned so much about church music and who actually taught me how to direct music. And that was a really exciting time. I kept in touch with him for years, you know, and he had done church choir work, you know, in the seminary, so he had so much experience. He brought such wonderful music with him for us to share.
I especially appreciate the English teachers like Sister Mary Louise and Edwin Mary, and history teachers. Now, I don't know if Sister Mary Mangan was at Nearing's Hall or at Webster, but she was a fabulous history teacher.
Sister Rose Vincent was a very supportive, affirming and encouraging person, as she was so passionate about music, tone quality, rhythm, and how to bring out the meaning of the words involved in the music, in the songs.
Another stalwart who I think kept the college going was Charlotte Schmidt, who was the receptionist and switchboard operator from the time I was a student until years after I left. If you needed anything, you called Charlotte. She knew how to handle it.
And another teacher who taught me when I was a senior in high school, and then all through college at Webster College, was Sister Jacqueline Grennan.
I can't think of Webster as it is today without thinking of Jacqueline, of Francetta, and of Francetta's predecessor, Sister Mary Ella Collins, who in many ways laid the groundwork for some of these dramatic changes that took place.
Jacqueline was still teaching a course or two, and so I had the great pleasure of being in classes taught by the woman who'd been my mentor at Merrick's Hall.
I had her for math and for religion and for English. And she was a dynamo teacher. We loved her. You know, she was dynamic and fun and knowledgeable.
I was totally distressed. I mean, she had gone so much farther than my little 22-year-old mind could go in thinking about the human community and about inclusiveness and about what was really worthwhile in life. And
She was a really deeply involved in the people around her. I found her, she touched my life in a lot of ways.
And in addition, some of the people whom I remember very fondly were Gladys and Rose, who were housekeepers, and Herman and Horace, who were maintenance people. And they were so dear to all of us and knew us by name. And when you returned to Webster after a summer teaching someplace else or something, they were some of the first people that you would greet.
Francetta's great leadership quality was she saw the leadership ability in other people. She was a very positive person, very personable person. She saw in Jacqueline and had requested Jacqueline to be her vice president because she saw in Jacqueline a different kind of leadership, the kind of visionary leadership.
Jacqueline also, like she was on President Johnson's education board or something. She knew MIT and Harvard professors. And so she had access to a lot of people. So she was the ideal one to pull together a board.
These were trying times. If you think of the 60s and 70s, you know, the social picture of the social unrest, changes within the church, the Catholic Church from Vatican II, and they were difficult times.
Jacqueline had brought a lot with others. There were other faculty members there who were very dynamic and moving forward, like people were not afraid.
Between Jacqueline and Francetta and another outstanding person was the faculty member was Sister Mary Mangan, who was in the history department. And somehow the three of them were able to hold the faculty together and to move it forward.
was more open and appreciative of differences and diversity and the wide varieties of humankind and human interests.
It took unique leadership, it took courage, it took faith. When I say it took faith, it really was the faith in the original goal of the college, and the present goal, to provide just an extraordinary education for young people.
I honestly believe that the experiences I had and the examples of the people I encountered at Webster College were basic to all that I put my hands to for the rest of my career and even for my life. It was there that I came alive, enhanced my gifts and talents, and learned how to use them and spread them around, hopefully to all whom I have encountered.